We're going to talk about the question of whether Mary was without sin. I mean, I think that this should be perfectly clear to anybody who has any sense whatsoever. No one was without sin in the Bible except for Jesus. Mary, along with all of us, have been born under the same curse. And the only one who's been able to resist sin is Jesus. So being blameless before God is not the same as being perfect or sinless. Being blameless before God means that you're justified through faith. Otherwise, we wouldn't need Jesus. Otherwise, those who were perfect, supposedly, would have been able to be the sacrificial lamb. We would have had no need for Jesus. They could have done it. Mark 3, verse 20. Then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, he's out of his mind. Do you think that's a sin, to think that the Messiah is out of his mind, to go and collect him and not believe that he knows what he's doing and he knows what he's saying? His family went to take charge of him. His mother, brothers, and sisters. He was told that they were waiting at the door to collect him, and he said, who is my mother, my brothers, and my sisters? You, who are sitting right here. So even in that moment, there's a clarification that just because you have a blood relationship with someone does not make them your mother, brother, sister, or father. Yes, you are to submit to your parents here. He's not disrespecting his parents, but what he's saying is that ultimately those who are going to be in a relationship with him, be adopted into sonship, are those who are sitting there feasting on what he's saying. Was it a sin for his mother to go and collect him and think he was out of his mind? Yeah, that's a sin. So that debunks that whole theory that Mary was sinless. She was blameless before God because of her faith. Obviously, she came to understand what it was that Jesus was doing, but for a moment, she thought he was out of his mind. Verse 31, then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. A crowd was sitting around him and told him, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you. Who are my mother and my brothers? He asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother. Mary was not without sin. She was blameless before God because of her faith. No one in the Bible, except for Jesus Christ, has been without sin. That teaching is absolute blasphemy, that anyone is without sin. If one person could have possibly saved themselves, could have possibly been without sin besides Jesus, that inherently makes the expectation that you should be able to be without sin too. You should be able to be without it, and you should not have needed Jesus. Is that the case, guys? It would have made Jesus' sacrifice moot, unnecessary, because the expectation would be that anybody else who is a human being, not God in the flesh, but a human being, should be able to resist sin to the point of being perfect and able to justify themselves. Is that the case? What this teaching is trying to do is to make Jesus obsolete, to make his sacrifice unnecessary, to demean what he has done. And believe me, anybody who believes this garbage, anyone who teaches this garbage, his sacrifice will be obsolete to them because they will not inherit any of it. You want a different God? You want Mary, or so-called Mary? Because I know that Jesus' mother would not be okay with this. They're not even worshiping her. This is demonic. It is antichrist. It is an attempt to replace Christ. And no one can replace Christ. But I will tell you one thing. You try, and you will never inherit eternal life. You will never inherit any of the promises that come with him. No promises come with Mary.